everyone, I'm Logan.
And I'm Matt.
And we're with Wild and Wanderlust. Today we're going to be taking you on an adventure to Dry Tortugas National Park. It's one of the least visited national parks in the United States, so we just wanted to bring you along and show you all that's there to know about it. So to start off, we want to give you some history about the park. So Dry Tortugas National Park is 100 square miles of pure wonder located 70 miles off Key West in the Gulf of Mexico. A total of 99% of the park consists primarily of open water, with only the presence of 7 small islands. It was designated as a national park in 1992 to protect the island and marine ecosystems of Dry Tortugas, in addition to protecting Fort Jefferson. This is the largest brick building in the Western Hemisphere. The national park is the third least visited national park in the lower 48 states, with only 79,000 annual visitors. You will understand why that is once we go through and discuss what it takes to get there, because it is a bit of a challenge.
Yeah, so as Logan said, it is not a very easy or cheap park to get to. So we're going to go over 3 different options. So option 1 is the one that we did. So it's where we take the Yankee Freedom ferry. So, just recapping, as mentioned, Dry Tortugas is extremely secluded, making it difficult to reach out without some assistance. One option would be to ride the Yankee Freedom, which is the official ferry of the Dry Tortugas. This ride takes approximately 2 hours from the port to the island, costing $220 per adult. The cost may be shocking to those of you who are used to visiting national parks that are accessible by vehicle, but I will say the cost was reasonable when considering it included breakfast and lunch, complimentary snorkeling gear, a narrated 45-minute tour of the fort, and admission to the national park. This was the option we chose when traveling to Dry Tortugas, and we were very happy with our experience, but I will say it was difficult to obtain tickets last minute, with most tours booking 1 to 2 months in advance. So if you're looking to go and use this option, make sure you book early.
We are including all this information at the end of the video, so definitely check that out. I'm going to include links to all the different sites that you need to go to try to book this, because there's a lot of different options.
So if you're looking for another option, then we'll take a look at option 2. So your next option would be to book a seat with Seaplane Adventures. It is the only seaplane service to Dry Tortugas. I think this would be an amazing option, not only to get to the park, but to have extraordinary views from above. But there is a steep price for this, to pay for this method of travel. For a half-day excursion, which includes 80 minutes total of flying and around 2.5 hours on the island, you can expect to pay $466 per adult. If you want to extend your stay to 6.5 hours on the island, you can expect to pay $819 per adult. For us, this was just not an option due to the cost, but I do feel it would be an amazing experience if you can afford it.
Yeah, definitely. We did look at this option because, of course, there's a lot more availability for something like this versus the Yankee Freedom, but the price range was just a little bit more than we wanted to spend, so definitely keep that in mind. If you do go down and you're okay with the cost, then last minute options going by Seaplane is definitely an option for you that we didn't have. So that could be a solution to some of the problems. If you get down to Key West, you really want to go and you don't have availability on Yankee Freedom, this would be the next great option.
All right, option number 3, which was also out of our realm of cost, is you could bring your own boat. So you
like
can,
we have a boat kayak in there.
Yeah, pulling behind the camper. So you can bring your own boat or book a private charter to reach Dry Tortugas. This can also be relatively expensive, and there was very limited options with this method of travel. For those individuals who opt to travel using their own boat, be aware that the island is isolated and there's no food, water, or fuel available in the park, so you have to plan well in advance. We didn't even include the cost in this because I'm sure it's even more out of our price range.
I did have a friend look into this in the past, and I believe they did go with this and booked to have somebody charter them out, but they ended up canceling last minute too for really no reason. Like, they said it was weather related, and then there was no inclement weather. So that's something to be mindful too. I feel like the Yankee Freedom is very consistent. They go even in inclement weather. If it's really bad weather, they will give you the option to cancel, but they run every day. They're not going to just easily cancel a whole group of people.
That's a good point. We actually attempted to go to Dry Tortugas twice. The first time we went there was really bad storms, and the Yankee Freedom was still going, but they did offer us our money back because it was really rough waters. They warned us of that, and we wanted to go and do snorkeling, which if the water's rough, we're not going to get very good views of it.
Yeah. Okay, so there's a lot to do while you're there, and you don't have a lot of time, so definitely make the most of it. Kind of plan ahead and see what you want to do versus what you don't want to do. We definitely did that. I'm not super into history, so we didn't do a whole bunch of history related things, but there's a lot if you do like that. So the first thing you can do is explore Fort Jefferson. It is the largest brick masonry structure in the Americas with over 16 million bricks. It was built in 1847. There's only 2 other forts in the United States that are larger, including Fort Monroe in Virginia and then Fort Adams in Rhode Island. So Fort Jefferson is known for its use in the American Civil War as a Union prison camp. Occupants consisted of Union soldiers, Confederate prisoners, and civilians. So if you're taking the trip with Yankee Freedom, you will be provided with a 45-minute narrated tour of Fort Jefferson. We did do that, and it was really, they didn't really take you around the whole fort. They kind of just stood at the entrance and kind of went over the history, but there was a longer one as well. And they also had a self-guided booklet that you could use as well if you wanted to tour the fort yourself and go through it at your own pace. Another option that a lot of people were doing when we went was bird watching. Dry Tortugas is the only place in the continental United States where the endangered sooty terns, if I'm saying that right, hopefully, I'm sorry if I'm not, there's more than 299 different species of birds spotted in Dry Tortugas. Bird activity is greatest from March through September with peaks in April and May. I think we went in April, if I recall.
Yeah, it definitely was April.
And they did have those sooty terns nesting at that point, and it was pretty amazing to see. We're not much bird watchers, but we did like watch them a little bit just because it was a lot of chaos and a lot going on. So definitely, if you're into bird watching, check that out.
Yeah, I think we were on the early end of it, so there was a couple hundred of the birds. But our understanding was essentially some of the small islands are just completely covered. I think it was later April.
Yeah.
So. All right, so there are 2 other things that we want to cover that you can do while you're at Dry Tortugas. So one, of course, is enjoying the beach. Many visitors end up spending their time relaxing on the white sand beaches and just enjoying the spectacular views around them, especially for those that want to relax a little bit on vacation, unlike us. There's plenty of beach space for everyone to enjoy. Definitely wouldn't have been a problem if that was an activity that we wanted to do. The last activity that we want to cover, which is of course our favorite, is going to be swimming and snorkeling. So with 99% of the park consisting of open water, swimming and snorkeling is a great option during your visit. During your trip, you can expect to see tropical fish, coral, and a lobster, and I mean a big one.
It was big.
Even if you aren't a great swimmer, the waters are relatively shallow. Anywhere between like 5 to 15 feet, there's really no reason to go beyond that, which allows for snorkeling to be accessible to everyone. I will say that snorkeling near the moat wall was the best option for seeing fish and coral, but the current made it a little more difficult for swimming for those that are only beginners. I will be including a map provided by Yankee Freedom, which provides locations that snorkeling is permitted. It's called Dry Tortugas Snorkeling Areas Map.
So I will say with the snorkeling, definitely the wall, like the moat wall, where we saw most of the wildlife. We didn't realize that at first. We kind of started out on the beach and then swam out a little bit and then saw a lot of people over that way, so we swam down. And you kind of we swam out and then kind of just floated back with the current, and that's where we saw most of the wildlife, which you'll see in the video. Definitely recommend it.
Yeah, important to note that you're actually not allowed to swim in the moat. You have to swim on the outside of the moat. So when we were saying the moat wall, we were in the appropriate section, out in the ocean, swimming by the...
So it's Fort Jefferson, the moat wall, and then the actual ocean, which is where we were at. So definitely be mindful of the rules and restrictions there as well. They, of course, want to preserve the fort and all the surrounding area, so wherever the group tells you to snorkel, just be mindful of that and go to where they suggest.
Absolutely.
So one thing we really like about all the national parks is some of the accessibility and convenience of them. So one thing we really want to do is rate them for you all. So it's a lot easier for you to understand how easy it is to get to, how accessible is it, trails, all of those things. So for Dry Tortugas, we did rate categories of convenience, accessibility, trails, and then just an overall rating. We used a scale from 1 to 5, 5 being the best, 1 being the worst. So as far as convenience, that is specifically talking about how hard is it to reach this national park. So we actually gave it a 1 out of 5. As mentioned, this park is very difficult to access with only a few options for transportation, including the ferry and the seaplane. Not only is it very difficult to access, also there's not a whole lot of availability on the ferry itself. So don't always expect to go down to Key West and jump on a boat the next day, because more than likely there won't be availability as that option.
And the wait list can get pretty extensive as well.
Yeah, so definitely be mindful of that. The next thing is accessibility. So this would be somebody that has a disability. Would they be able to navigate through the park? We did give it a 3 out of 5. So Fort Jefferson can be explored with like wheelchair use or canes or walkers or things like that, because it is relatively flat. They may have some difficulty getting to the upper levels of the fort, because you are able to climb to the top of it with stairs. There is no elevator. Definitely keep that in mind as far as accessibility. The terrain surrounding the fort is mostly beaches, sand, so that can also be difficult if people struggle with the unevenness of the sand. So be mindful if you have any sort of disability that may make it difficult to travel. I believe the boat did have accessibility options for people traveling on the actual ferry, if I recall.
Yes, they did. Yeah, they were very mindful, wheelchair accessible. They, of course, wanted to maintain the integrity of the fort, so they haven't added an elevator. But you can still see the majority of the fort, and majority of the experiences, which is why we'd give it a 3 out of 5.
Yeah, definitely.
One other thing that we always want to rate every park on are the trails and hiking, because that's one of our greatest passions. So a reminder that the fort and the land is only about 1% of the overall national park, so a very small amount. And that pretty much led to us rating it a 1 out of 5. There's really no trails to be completed in the park. You can roam around the Fort Jefferson, like walk around the moat in the areas that are not debilitated, and stroll the beaches. But for those of you who are avid hikers, it's not really the place for you.
This is not the one for you. If you're just interested in seeing the national parks and some of the things that you can experience there, that's fine. But if you're specifically looking to hike, it's just not that place.
No, but we knew that going in there, and we're going to be a little bit of completionist on this, so we had to go just for the sake of completing it. And then the fourth category that we want to rate it on is going to be called like awestruck, or kind of just like that wow factor that you get when you see something just beautiful or extraordinary. Yeah. So for us, coming up on the boat, being able to see the beautiful water of the Keys, of course, added a lot of value to it. Being able to go snorkel, see a lobster that was like the size of my arm, that was all really cool experiences. But we still felt like there's still a little bit that was left to be desired. Wasn't quite the physical thrill that we were hoping for, so we'd give it a 3 out of 5. When we total this all together, that's 2 1s and 2 3s, which makes it a really nice overall rating of a 2 out of 5. Yeah. With that being said, it is still a really cool experience that you should go to if you have available time while you're in the Keys, and it looks like you'll be able to get the ferry ride, because it is kind of like that once in a lifetime adventure. I don't think we'll ever go back, but I'm so glad that we made the effort to go to it.
Don't think it's really a place you need to go back. If you're really just touring the national parks to like complete them all and to feel like you've really experienced them all, I think you can definitely experience it in that one day, as long as you make the most of your time while you're there. I mean, I definitely think you could go back if you're more into like fishing and things like that, taking a charter out, but that's not really specifically getting on to Dry Tortugas and visiting the fort and stuff. But I mean, there's other options to experience, but I definitely think that it's a one-day sort of national park, not an extensive amount of time.
I do think going on the Yankee Freedom ferry was the appropriate amount of time. I think if you were on the Seaplanes at 2.5 hours, you would definitely be a little rushed.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you go on the Yankee Freedom, I think 1 day would be sufficient.
So we really appreciate you watching. If you have questions about Dry Tortugas, feel free to message us. We'll try our very best to explain everything that we can to you. Like I said, I'm providing resources at the end, so if you have questions or just need resources that you want for the actual trip, I'll have all that connected as well. Definitely recommend it. Hopefully you'll get to experience it just like we did.
Thank you for your time.
Come on.
recording.
And someone's here to start breathing for us. What else should be in there now? Hello.
Hi, I'm Logan,
And I'm Matt.
and we're with Wild and Wanderlust. Today we're going to take you on an adventure going to Dry Tortugas National Park. It has a lot of interesting facts and history about it, so definitely worth checking it out. But today we're going to start with history. So Dry Tortugas National Park is 100 square miles of pure wonder located 70 miles off Key West, Florida, in the Gulf of Mexico. The total of 94...
It's now the Gulf of America.
I need this girl to leave.
What?
Don't hold her there. She's very distracting.
Gulf of America.
It's not Gulf of America, it's Gulf of Mexico. Okay.
Deuces.